Galactic empires think they know war. The voice echoes across the stars, crackling with raw defiance. They believe in numbers, power, fear. A jagged pause. The holofeed cuts to a warship burning, Malvrith insignia melting off its hull. But they forgot one thing. General Jackson Kane's voice slices through the chaos like a plasma blade, laced with venom and dark humor. You don't outlast humanity. You survive us, if you're lucky. And then, pure silence. Because sometimes, silence is louder than war. You want war? The words echoed across the council chamber, a low growl laced with fury and cold conviction. General Jackson, Hellfire, Kane stood at the edge of the hollow table, his cybernetic fingers digging into the metal as he leaned forward. His eyes, glowing with the faint red reflection of orbital fires, scanned the room, daring anyone to challenge him. Counselor Doran shifted uneasily, his face pale beneath the artificial glow of the emergency lights. General Kane, you can't be serious. Serious? Kane cut him off, his voice barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of 1,000 dead colonies. I watched Vega 7 burn. I heard the screams over comms as they begged for mercy that never came. He turned, pacing the length of the table like a predator sizing up prey. The Malvrith don't negotiate. They exterminate. Counselor Linara's lips pressed into a thin line. And if we retaliate, they'll wipe out what's left of us. If? Kane barked out a harsh laugh. They already planned to. This, he waved toward the flashing message projected above the table, isn't an offer. It's a countdown. The final compliance decree hovered in the air, cold and sterile, its text a death sentence. Surrender within 72 hours or face complete planetary sterilization. Kane's jaw clenched. He'd read it 5 times already, and the words still tasted like ash in his mouth. We can't win this war, Doran mumbled, his voice cracking as he buried his face in his hands. They'll crush us. Crush us? Kane's gaze hardened. You think they haven't already? How many colonies have to burn before you realize we're not fighting for victory? His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. We're fighting for survival. And I don't plan to die begging. Linara's eyes flickered with uncertainty, but Kane saw the spark, the tiny ember of defiance buried beneath the fear. That's what he needed. You think this is about winning? Kane leaned closer, his voice venomous. We're not here to win. We're here to make them bleed. To make them regret ever thinking humans were prey. Silence fell over the chamber, thick and suffocating. The counselors shifted, their faces etched with doubt and dread. Kane could feel it, the weight of hopelessness pressing down on them like a gravitational field. But he wasn't here to offer hope. Do you know why the Malvrith fear us? Kane's voice was softer now, almost gentle. It's not our technology. It's not our weapons. He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. It's because we're relentless. His eyes met Linara's, and he saw it, that flicker of resolve reigniting. They've conquered 1,000 species that folded the moment their skies burned. But we're not like them. His voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. We don't break. We get mad. We get even. And when the dust settles, we're still standing. Doran's voice wavered. But the cost is irrelevant. Kane's tone was ice. Because if we don't fight, there won't be anything left to save. Silence. Heavy. Crushing. Kane let it linger. Let the weight of reality settle over them like a funeral shroud. Then he straightened, his jaw tightening as he tapped a command into the hollow interface. The map shifted. This is the Infernal Rift. Kane's voice was all business now, cold and calculated. The map highlighted a sector pulsing with chaotic gravitational anomalies and forgotten alien superweapons. It's a goddamn minefield. No sane fleet would enter it. Linara's brow furrowed. And you plan to, what? Lure them into it? No. Kane's smile was grim. I plan to drown them in it. A new projection materialized, a tactical breakdown of Project Scorched Earth. They think we're desperate. Good. Let them think that. Kane's eyes burned with cold fire. We're going to hit their supply lines, cripple their warp lanes, and when they come to crush us, we'll drag them straight into the rift. Doran shook his head. That's suicide. No. Kane's expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed with something dangerous. That's vengeance. You can't seriously believe this will work. Lenara's voice was softer now, but Kane could hear it, the shift. She wasn't denying it. She was considering it. I don't need them to believe it will work. Kane's lips curled into a vicious smile. I just need them to believe we're desperate enough to try. Another pause. This time, it was Kane who filled the silence. They're expecting us to fold. His voice was a low growl now, each word laced with venom. They think they've already won. They're laughing at us. His eyes narrowed, and his voice dropped to a deadly whisper. But they don't understand what happens when you push humanity too far. Silence. We're not just fighting for Earth. Kane's gaze swept the room one last time, locking onto each counselor. We're fighting for every colony they glassed. Every life they erased. Every scream that echoed across space. A beat. You want war? Kane's jaw clenched, and his voice was barely above a whisper. We'll give them hell. For a moment, nothing moved. The counselors stared at Kane, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. Then Lenara spoke. What do you need? Kane's smile was grim, and for the first time, the fire in his eyes wasn't just anger. It was something more. Everything. You're really going to do this, aren't you? Doran's voice was barely above a whisper. Kane didn't answer. He didn't have to. The holofeed flickered, and the countdown resumed. 72 hours. Kane's voice was calm now, the storm coiled just beneath the surface. Get ready. Because when this starts... His cybernetic fingers clenched into a fist. The galaxy's going to burn. They think they've won. Kane's voice was a cold whisper in the dark, his breath fogging the visor of his tactical helm. The war map pulsed in front of him, crimson markers highlighting Malvrith's supply lines. But we're about to teach them what happens when you piss off the wrong species. Phase 1 ready, sir. Lieutenant Harrow's voice crackled through the comms, steady but laced with anticipation. Trigger it. The universe held its breath. And then hell ignited. Across 6 sectors, Operation Phantom Virus came online. Malvrith warships, pristine and deadly, suddenly convulsed as their systems screamed under the assault of human-engineered AI chaos. Firewalls crumbled. Encryption keys shattered. Navigation grids twisted. Entire fleets drifted into each other, colliding in bursts of plasma and wreckage. Virus spreading like wildfire. Harrow reported, voice tight with awe. They're shooting at their own. Just like you said? Kane's smile was razor-sharp. Good. The Malvrith thought themselves invincible, untouchable. They'd relied on perfect efficiency, on seamless command networks that made them gods of war. But Kane knew better. Empires didn't fall because of strength. They fell because someone slipped a knife between the cracks. Phase 2. Confirmed. In the outer rim, automated mining platforms overloaded, their fusion reactors detonating in synchronized chaos. Supply chains ruptured. Plasma conduits destabilized. Across the core systems, factories fell silent, starved of resources. Entire sectors plunged into disarray. Malvrith logistics compromised. Harrow murmured, lacing his words. They're bleeding out. Kane's voice was cold steel. And now we twist the knife. Phase 3? Do it. The Zarnathi Syndicate had been waiting. Waiting for chaos. Waiting for vengeance. Kane had promised them vengeance, and now they descended like carrion crows. Warp gates erupted with Zarnathi war cruisers, slicing through already fractured Malvrith formations. Sir, Zarnathi are engaging all along the frontier. Let them feast. Kane's grin was grim. Just make sure they don't overstep. They'll betray us. Harrow's voice was low. Of course they will. Kane's eyes narrowed. But I'm counting on it. As Malvrith fleets turned to fight their unexpected new enemy, Kane's real weapon was already in play. Project Nemesis. A ghost in the machine, an AI virus embedded deep in Malvrith command systems, manipulating fleet trajectories and distorting chain-of-command responses. Malvrith admirals barked contradictory orders, their fleets spinning into chaos. Ships collided. Fleets cannibalized themselves. They're tearing themselves apart. Harrow's voice was hushed, almost reverent. Not yet. Kane's jaw tightened. They're not scared enough. Fear. That's what Kane wanted. Fear wasn't logical. Fear broke empires. He wasn't just fighting a war, he was waging psychological annihilation. Initiate Operation Spectre. The comms fell silent for a beat. Then Harrow's voice came back, almost hesitant. Sir, are you sure? Kane's eyes were cold, unyielding. They need to understand. Copy that. Blackout protocols activated across Malvrith colonies. Holofeeds distorted, broadcasting fragmented messages of death and chaos. Civilian population centers went dark, leaving millions stranded in silence. And in that silence, Kane's voice echoed across the stars. This is General Jackson Kane. His voice was calm, but it carried the weight of 1,000 worlds burning. You wanted war. Silence. We're here to give it to you. Malvrith civilian broadcasts filled with distorted footage of burning cities, shattered fleets, and fractured command structures. Fear rippled across the Empire like a virus. They saw the unstoppable wave coming. And they realized, too late. Malvrith communications grid collapsing. Harrow's tone was hushed, reverent. Perfect. Kane's eyes burned with vengeance as he watched the Empire choke on its own arrogance. Sir, incoming transmission from Zarnathi High Command. Kane's lips curled in a humorless smile. Patch it through. The alien visage that appeared was all jagged mandibles and gleaming bioarmor. General Kane, the Zarnathi commander purred, his voice dripping with false respect. Your services are no longer required. Kane's smile was ice. I was wondering when you'd get cocky. We'll take it from here. The Zarnathi commander sneered. Humanity's debt is paid. Funny, Kane murmured, leaning back in his chair, voice like a blade drawn across a throat. Because I was about to say the same thing. What? Confusion flickered across the alien's face. Kane tapped a single command. Nemesis protocol activated. Across the sector, Zarnathi warships shuddered as Trojan AI code buried deep within their systems came alive. Shields failed. Weapon systems powered down. Command nodes collapsed. You didn't think I'd trust you, did you? Kane's voice was velvet over steel. I don't do alliances. I do leverage. You. The Zarnathi commander's words died as his own fleet erupted in chaos. Kane's expression was cold. Goodbye. The comm cut off. Zarnathi fleet neutralized, sir. Harrow's voice was steady, but Kane could hear the edge of awe in it. And the Malvrith? Their command structure is shattered. Entire fleets are drifting. Civil unrest is spreading. Not enough. Kane's jaw clenched. We're not done. He tapped the holotable, bringing up the final phase. It's time for the Inferno Gambit. Harrow's breath caught. Sir, that'll destabilize half the core systems. Good. Kane's eyes were hard. I don't want them limping away. I want them broken so badly they'll never rise again. Activating now. The Abyssal Rift, a swirling cosmic nightmare of gravitational anomalies and unstable energy, flickered into view. Malvrith fleets, unaware of the death trap awaiting them, followed pre-programmed trajectories toward their doom. They're walking into a graveyard. Harrow murmured, awe in his voice. And I'm about to bury them. Kane's voice was ice, his gaze unrelenting. Final phase engaged, sir. Across the galaxy, chaos exploded on a scale the universe had never seen. Malvrith fleets were consumed by the rift, torn apart by gravitational anomalies and ancient superweapons. Entire systems collapsed. Malvrith command down. Zarnathi fleet neutralized. The rift, Harrow's voice trailed off as the destruction unfolded. Sir, it's done. Kane exhaled slowly, his jaw tight, his heart pounding in his chest. But there was no victory in his expression. Only cold, empty silence. Not yet. His voice was barely above a whisper. We're not done until their ashes scatter across the void. Sir? Kane's gaze was distant, staring at the dying stars beyond the hollow display. Burn it all. The rift is destabilizing. Harrow's voice was steady, but Kane could hear the unease beneath it. Malvrith forces are scattering, but they're not retreating. Of course they're not. Kane's tone was grim. They're too arrogant to know when they've already lost. The holographic map flickered, displaying the carnage unfolding across the infernal rift. Malvrith dreadnoughts struggled to maintain formation as gravitational anomalies tore through space, distorting reality. Yet, even in chaos, the enemy clung to their pride, refusing to accept the inevitable. Sir, multiple Malvrith capital ships are converging on Vector Theta. Harrow's fingers danced over the controls. Looks like they're trying to re-establish a fallback line. Let them. Kane's voice was pure steel. They're not falling back. They're walking into their own funeral. Harrow hesitated. But if they stabilize the line... They won't. Kane's eyes narrowed, his mind already 3 moves ahead. We don't give them the chance. Orders? Kane's jaw clenched. Bring in the Reapers. The comms lit up as Kane's elite strike squads, nicknamed Reapers, engaged. Modified stealth cruisers, loaded with enough firepower to annihilate a fleet, emerged from the chaos of the rift like predators closing in on prey. Reaper 1, target acquired. Permission to unleash hell? Burn them. Kane's voice was ice. The void erupted. Precision plasma strikes sliced through Malvrith formations, cutting down flagships before they could reorient. Malvrith cruisers panicked, their captains barking conflicting orders as the chaos spiraled beyond their control. Fleet cohesion collapsing, sir. Harrow's voice was hushed. Kane's eyes stayed locked on the display. They're not broken yet. Sir? Kane's gaze hardened. HFY is still breathing. The name alone sent a cold shiver through the command deck. Lord Admiral HFY. The Butcher of Andar Prime. The architect of Earth's annihilation. The man who had laughed as entire human colonies burned. Kane's jaw tightened. Patch me through to Reaper Squadron. Channel open. Kane's voice was low, lethal. Locate HFY's flagship. Do not engage. Just pin him down. Acknowledged, sir. Seconds dragged like eons. Then, target located. The display zoomed in, locking onto a colossal dreadnought, its hull bristling with weapons that had incinerated entire worlds. The Dominator. Kane's lips curled into a cold smile. We end this. Sir, if we hit that thing head-on. We're not hitting it head-on. Kane's mind was already 5 steps ahead. We're taking it apart from the inside. Harrow's brow furrowed. Infiltration op? Kane's eyes gleamed. Ghost Protocol. The air in the command center grew colder. Ghost Protocol wasn't standard infiltration. It was suicidal. Sir? Harrow's voice was low, hesitant. That's a one-way trip. Kane's gaze didn't waver. I know. Permission to speak freely? Harrow's voice cracked. Kane's expression softened for the briefest moment. Granted. You don't have to do this. Harrow's eyes met his. We can finish this without you on the ground. Kane's jaw clenched, but his voice was calm. No, we can't. He exhaled slowly. HFY won't run. He'll stay on that ship until it burns around him. And I need to be there when it happens. Why? Kane's eyes darkened. Because this isn't just about winning. Silence. It's about sending a message. Harrow's shoulders slumped, but he nodded. Understood. Prep the infiltration team. Kane's tone was final. I'll lead it myself. Reaper Squadron will cover your insertion. Kane's lips twitched into something that wasn't quite a smile. Good. I'd hate to go alone. Minutes later, Kane stood aboard the Ravager, his personal strike corvette, flanked by an elite squad of hardened veterans. Each one carried the weight of 100 fallen worlds on their shoulders. Final checks complete. Harrow's voice echoed through the comms. Ghost protocol is green. Kane's hand hovered over the controls, his mind flashing back to Earth, to the screams, the flames, the silence that followed. This ends tonight. Insertion in 3, 2, 1. The world blurred as the Ravager slipped through the rift's chaotic gravitation, bypassing enemy sensors with pinpoint precision. We're in. Kane's boots hit the deck of the Dominator with a solid thud. The corridors pulsed with the eerie glow of Malvrith biotech, walls humming with alien energy. Move fast. Kane's voice was low, but it carried the weight of command. We're not tourists. His squad moved like shadows, slicing through Malvrith sentries with brutal efficiency. Plasma bolts hissed through the air, and alien bodies crumpled before they could even scream. Main reactor located. One of the operatives murmured, his voice a ghost in the comms. Set the charges. Kane's eyes never left the corridor ahead. We need to cripple this thing before they know we're here. Charges primed. 5 minutes to detonation. Kane's gut twisted. Then let's go find the bastard. They moved deeper into the ship, the oppressive weight of alien machinery pressing down on them. Then Kane heard it, the voice. Ah, Kane! The comms crackled with malicious amusement. I was hoping you'd come. Kane's jaw clenched. HFY. You've made quite the mess. The alien warlord's tone was laced with condescension. But you're too late. The rift's chaos won't last. And when it stabilizes, your little rebellion will be nothing more than ash. Funny, Kane growled, advancing toward the command chamber. I was about to say the same thing. The blast doors hissed open. And there he was. HFY. Towering, armored in obsidian alloy that pulsed with energy, the warlord stood at the center of the command bridge like a living nightmare. You came all this way just to die? HFY's mandibles clicked, a sound that sent a shiver down spines. Kane's grip on his plasma rifle tightened. No. His voice was steady, his eyes cold. I came to make sure you never laugh again. Plasma fire erupted. The bridge exploded into chaos as Kane's squad tore into the Malvrith Guard. Kane's focus was singular. HFY. They circled each other, predator and prey. You're persistent. HFY sneered. But persistence won't save your species. No. Kane's smile was grim. But vengeance might. Kane moved. Fast. Plasma bolts screamed through the air as the two titans collided, a brutal dance of death. HFY struck, claws swiping with lethal precision, but Kane was faster. Years of combat, of pain, had forged him into a weapon designed for one purpose. You killed my world. Kane's voice was a growl. A plasma blade ignited in Kane's hand. Now I'm here to kill yours. The blade plunged deep, right where HFY's core pulsed with alien energy. For Earth. HFY's roar echoed through the bridge as his body collapsed, power flickering from his shattered core. Detonation sequence active. Harrow's voice was steady in Kane's ear. You've got 60 seconds to get out of there. Kane's breath was ragged, but his eyes never left HFY's broken body. Good. Sir? Seal the doors behind me. But that's an order. Harrow's voice was barely above a whisper. Yes, sir. As the squad evacuated, Kane stood alone in the heart of the Dominator. You wanted war, he murmured softly, staring at the dying glow of HFY's core. We gave you hell. The detonations began. And Kane didn't move. Detonation in 60 seconds. The words echoed in Kane's ears, but he didn't move. The glow of HFY's shattered core pulsed faintly, flickering like a dying star. Smoke filled the bridge, the air thick with the stench of burned circuitry and alien flesh. Kane's breathing was steady, but his mind raced, calculating, analyzing, searching for an outcome that didn't end with him vaporized along with the Dominator. General Kane, come in. Harrow's voice was tight, bordering on panic. Evac window closing. You need to move, now. Kane's eyes stayed locked on the lifeless husk of HFY. Not yet. What? Harrow's disbelief was palpable. Sir, the charges are primed. You've got 30 seconds before that entire ship goes critical. I know. Kane's jaw clenched. I need 10 more. His eyes darted to the console beside HFY's corpse. Ancient Malvrith symbols pulsed faintly, the system barely holding together. But Kane recognized the interface. Command relay. Come on, Kane muttered under his breath, his cybernetic hand interfacing with the console. Don't fail me now. Sir, what the hell are you doing? Harrow's voice was laced with panic. That system's fried. Not all of it. Kane's fingers danced over the controls, bypassing corrupted sectors and rerouting power to a single subsystem. His neural link flared, feeding a cascade of data directly into his mind. I need control of their core network. Sir, this is insane. No. Kane's voice was ice. This is finishing the job. Data flooded his mind, schematics, security protocols, deep system overrides. He wasn't just looking for escape. He was looking for annihilation. Got you? Kane's eyes locked on a blinking node buried deep in the Malvrith network. Planetary Defense Nexus. HFY hadn't just commanded a fleet. He'd controlled the Empire's defense grid, an automated system capable of turning planetary weapons against any threat. Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. Perfect. Sir, 20 seconds. Harrow's voice was desperate now. Almost there. Kane's neural link surged as he fed a simple, devastating command into the core. Override planetary defense protocols. Set primary target to. His voice dropped, barely above a whisper. Malvrith core. A single pulse confirmed the order. You wanted war. Kane's voice was quiet, almost reverent. Here's your apocalypse. 15 seconds, sir. Harrow's voice broke through the comms. Get out of there. Kane exhaled slowly, his fingers leaving the console as the system locked in his command. I'm done. Then move. Kane turned, his steps steady despite the chaos erupting around him. Plasma conduits screamed as the ship's core destabilized, sending violent tremors rippling through the deck. But Kane didn't run. He walked, each step measured, each breath steady. Evac shuttle is docked, sir. Harrow's voice was tight. But you've got 5 seconds before. Kane's boots hit the loading ramp just as the ship's core ignited. The blast consumed the Dominator in a supernova of raw energy, the shockwave tearing through the rift and sending debris cascading through space. Punch it! Kane's voice was a bark, and the shuttle's thrusters roared to life. The explosion chased them, plasma tendrils licking at the edges of the craft as they rocketed out of the blast zone. Kane's grip on the bulkhead was iron as he stared out the viewport, watching the Dominator dissolve into fragments. Status? Kane's voice was calm, but his eyes burned. We're clear. Harrow's voice was shaky, but relief flooded his tone. Minimal damage. We're headed for extraction point Omega. Kane's jaw clenched, his gaze still fixed on the dying embers of the Dominator. Not yet. Sir? Kane's neural link pinged, confirming the final stage of his plan. His command had propagated through the Malvrith defense network. Planetary defense grids across the core systems were coming online, but they weren't targeting incoming threats. Sir? Harrow's voice was barely above a whisper. What did you do? Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. I gave them what they asked for. Malvrith core worlds, once the pride of the Empire, erupted as their own planetary defense systems turned against them. Orbital cannons rained plasma down on their cities. Defensive satellites fired on civilian transport ships. Their own automated security systems slaughtered millions without hesitation. They laughed at us. Kane's voice was a low growl. They glassed our worlds. Burned our people. His eyes narrowed. Now they get to feel what that's like. Harrow's face was pale, his eyes wide as reports flooded the hollow feed. Sir, entire Malvera systems are collapsing. Good. Kane's tone was cold, emotionless. Make sure the rest of the galaxy is watching. They'll call it genocide. Harrow murmured. They can call it whatever they want. Kane's eyes were distant, locked on the chaos unfolding across the core systems. But they'll remember. Silence fell over the shuttle, broken only by the distant echoes of destruction. Kane's mind was a storm, relief, rage, and emptiness swirling into a void that no amount of vengeance could fill. Sir, it's over. Harrow's voice was soft, almost pleading. No. Kane's eyes were cold. It's never over. Harrow swallowed hard. Then what now? Kane's jaw clenched, his gaze distant. Now? His voice was barely above a whisper. Now we prepare for what comes next. Harrow frowned. What comes next, sir? Kane's lips curled into a grim smile, but there was no humor in it. Retribution. The shuttle's engines roared as they cleared the rift, but Kane's mind was already elsewhere. He could feel it, a ripple in the void. Something stirring. We shattered the Empire. Kane's voice was barely above a whisper. But something worse is coming. Harrow's brow furrowed. Worse? Kane's eyes narrowed as the void stretched out before them, endless and unforgiving. We kicked open a door that should have stayed closed. His voice was quiet, but the weight of his words hung heavy in the air. And whatever's on the other side. A cold chill ran down Harrow's spine. What do we do? Kane's jaw clenched, his eyes burning with the same relentless determination that had carried humanity through hell. We do what we've always done. His voice was a promise, etched in steel and fire. We survive. Silence filled the shuttle as the stars stretched out before them. But Kane's mind was already locked on the battles yet to come. And if they come for us, his voice was barely above a whisper, we'll give them hell.